Hey, welcome to the Out of Spec Podcast. I'm here with Mike Breeling and Austin Schieffer. Today we're going to talk about cars, believe it or not. We're going to talk about the Ford Maverick, one of the worst EVs of the year, and also one of the biggest EVs of the year. And we just have a lot of things on deck, so we're going to jump right in. I do want to start with a little bit of what we've been driving slash doing. Austin was actually out here in Colorado. He's actually down in Dallas back home now, but we had some fun. I guess doing what they call leaf peeping. I don't know what do they call it out there, Mike?
That is
When you
exactly what
go,
it's called.
oh really? Okay.
Yeah,
For
that's
some
what people
reason,
in New England refer to it as too.
in that's the same in Colorado. For some reason, I never heard that in the Midwest. But that is something we did.
Let's
So
go
I'll
and look
share
in
the
the leaves,
screen.
eh? Yeah.
The
Yeah. So
foliage.
Austin, I don't think we've shown Austin's car on the podcast yet, but this is his Fiesta ST. We took
There
it
it is, all its
on
glory.
probably 6 hours of basically mountain roads
Yeah.
with gorgeous views. Like this is at 12,500 feet, and it was unfazed. I mean, still fast and fun. It made me really wish I had a turbo.
I had a turbo, yeah. I was going to say the turbo makes a big difference.
Yeah. And then I had my naturally aspirated Miata, which still like drives great. I went on a cruise with a bunch of 911s this past weekend, and I actually kept up with all of them, which either means I'm a great driver or they're slow. Uh, a bunch of 911s, and then there was me and this Audi, my friend's Audi S4, which is a 6-speed manual, and then a
Cool.
Lotus Exige that has been completely converted to carbon fiber. I think it's the only one in the country so far that this company has done. But it is 100% carbon fiber. Every panel, like everything that can be, it is,
That sounds
and it's been
rad. That
supercharged.
sounds so cool.
Yeah,
That sounds
that thing.
expensive.
Yeah,
Sounds
this thing
uncomfortable.
is gnarly, but that's kind of been yeah, the what I've been up to. It's phenomenal out here. Like I guess I'm gathering the leaves change at different times throughout the year, so it probably hasn't really hit peak color changing for you, Mike, out in the east. But
Nope, not yet.
out here, we're pretty much at our peak, if in fact kind of on the downhill slope now, where it's just kind of becoming dead.
Yeah, I
But
think out in like western North Carolina, out towards the Appalachians near Asheville and that area, the leaves are actually were peak or about to be somewhere around there, like right now. Because I've seen some pictures coming out of there in the past week or so that look stunning.
yeah,
There's a lot of good roads in that area, apart from Tail of the Dragon. I mean, the Blue Ridge Parkway itself right now would be full of leaf peepers for sure.
geez,
And we've had excellent weather. Today's the first day we've had rain in probably 2 weeks. So
Oh,
it's
wow.
been beautiful and not humid. It's perfect weather.
wow, that's awesome. It is starting to get cold out here now, at least at night. So it's my favorite time of the year. Got Oktoberfest beer, pumpkin spice latte. Um, I also finished my time with the Taycan, which Kyle just took from me this weekend to do some range testing on. And I guess I wanted to talk a little bit, just kind of finalize my thoughts on it,
Yeah.
um, especially comparing it to the Model S. And I don't think I've ever been so torn on, if I had the money to pick an identical spec car, Model S or Taycan, I don't know what I would choose. The Taycan is such a great, it was great as a driver's car. Like it made this canyon fun, like driving up into the clouds on the mountain's top. Like it was engaging, but then in kind of a lot of the day-to-day stuff, I was annoyed enough with the infotainment and the center screen, and I yeah, I don't know. And
Yeah,
it
Tesla definitely spoils you with their infotainment. I mean, it's done the best in a car. I mean, there's
yeah,
hands down, you're not going to experience a better one
Yep.
and
from
I
any
wasn't
manufacturer.
UIs.
I wasn't like yeah, I didn't know what to expect when I got Kyle's Model 3 for a few weeks because I was in that boat of, well, if it doesn't have CarPlay, I'm going to hate it. But that's because I've experienced so many horrible OEM infotainment systems. And then when I discovered Teslas, I was like, wait, this is perfect. I mean, there's a few gripes here and there, but it's incredibly solid. And then this one is fine in general, but the navigation was still frustrating at times. The I guess the air conditioning controls and everything. I just kept wishing it was a little easier to use as like day-to-day operation. I had a couple issues with Electrify America charging, but mostly that was fine. It all worked itself out. But it just wasn't as like perfectly infused with like the Tesla supercharger network. So yeah, I just want to combine a Plaid and a Taycan
Say, it
turbo
sounds like
cross
you want
Turismo.
like a Model S UI and like range capability and charging infrastructure. Combine that with a Taycan driving dynamics and styling, and you're there.
Yeah. This is more interesting to look at. I think Model S design is fantastic.
I think it looks good.
It is fairly
especially
timeless.
The cross Turismo flavor of the Taycan, though, is way, to me, more appealing to the eye and interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. The Model S is great. I think it's timeless. The fact that it was unveiled in 2009 and still looks good. There's not many cars that can do that. But it's also not super intriguing and exciting looking. It's just a sedan. That's a very well sculpted, nice sedan. But as someone who doesn't usually like sedans, the Cross Turismo, almost for the body style alone, that's why I would choose it.
Yeah, of course. I mean, wagon is a wagon. I mean, it always wins. And really, if it comes down to like between those two, a Model S is not really a driver's car. A Model S is, if you're a techno nerd, it's great, because I think most of us here are on this podcast. I mean, one of us has worked for Tesla before, and we know how great their software is. It's amazing, and it does, their cars charge very quick. They're very reliable. They get great range, but as a driving feel, I would take the Porsche over the Tesla if I were spending the same money, because now a new Model S is about the same money as entry-level Taycan. Now the Model S will have more performance and better range, but the Taycan will handle better. And I think it just feels better from my time that I've spent in one. It just feels more well put together. Now, I don't have too much experience with the infotainment, didn't really touch it too much. I hear what you're saying about the vents, because Taycan does have that weird touchscreen vent thing, kind of like Tesla, but it's just executed nowhere near as well.
Yeah,
and
it's
they
so
definitely
weird
need to improve that.
It's so weird because they look like vents you should interact with your hand, and
yeah, you want to physically touch it.
Yeah,
but you can't move it.
But yeah, I do have to caveat. So you're right. The Tesla, I love the party tricks and the gimmicks and the Easter eggs. Like I place a lot of stock in that. Like I think that's amazing, and that's almost enough reason for me to buy a car. But if I was like, this was a base Cross Turismo, very, very minimal. Another issue I had was the adaptive cruise control just wasn't great. But if I had a Cross Turismo with the like full Inno drive system, quote unquote self-driving, whatever, and the rear wheel steering and the upgraded like Burmeister sound system, like I feel like with the 21-inch wheels and Mamba green, like we spec'd last week forever, I think that would be, yeah, I'd probably have to pick that over a Tesla, and I would just get over my gripes. I'd be like, this is too cool of a car to pass up. So, but yeah, but enough Taycan talk. We talked about it for a long time last week. So refer back to last week if you
before we get too far back. Yeah,
if you really want to dig into what Taycan is and how many options it has, and build
Jordan,
with us.
One quick last thought is, if you're looking for something that handles well with Tesla perks, I think really, if you're not wanting something as premium, the Model 3 Performance is probably going to be the best bang for your buck, and get a car that has a lot more feel than the Model S. I'm not going to say it handles like a Porsche, because it doesn't, but I think in Tesla world, that's your closest thing you can get to a car that actually drives nicely.
Yeah. Or shell out for a Roadster, but they're ridiculously expensive now.
And also, I thought you were talking about the new one. I was like, yeah, that's not existent yet, but
that'll change.
That and the Cybertruck.
Yeah, what a duo though.
And the $25,000 Tesla that's supposed to be announced.
Model 2. Let's talk about the worst EV of the year. At least that's how Kyle has put it. He put out his video this week on the Mazda MX-30.
That is a hell of a still shot.
Yeah, his face sums it up.
Yeah.
So this is a car I was really intrigued by when we found out about it, and then got less intrigued the more we found out about it. I think it looks fine. Actually, now that I'm seeing it in video, it looks less fine to me. It has the plastic cladding I hated on the CX-30. It's kind of what I expected though from Mazda with an EV. It does okay in the corners. The interior and infotainment is fantastic, except for the back seat. They're not abysmal, but they're subpar, especially for a quote unquote crossover. But yeah, this is shared with the CX-30 platform, which is interesting because the best EVs have their own ground up platform, and this is not that. So that's red flag number one. You open the hood, which I can see if I can find that in the video. Yeah, right here. And there's a bunch of like empty space because next year they're going to be bringing a range extender variant with basically an engine, which we don't know anything about yet, but that could be a saving grace because the issue with
I can already tell you that's the one you want.
So the issue of the MX-30 is the range. That's maybe the biggest one. You get 100 miles, which is usable for a lot of people, I will argue. Everyone's comparing it to ID4, Teslas, everything else, which granted, this is encroaching on those price categories, being in the kind of low to mid $30,000 range. But that range is adequate for a lot of people if this is a second car. The range extender could help that. Now, the other thing, though, is the range being abysmal. I was like, oh, maybe it has good charging. Well, Kyle found out the peak charging he was able to see was just over 30 kilowatt. So maybe MX-30 stands for the abysmal charging you'll find. So it charges about in the normal time as a other EV with 3 times the range. So percentage-wise. So that's pretty bad. Really bad. So it's just not a car you'll be taking on any sort of adventures. And Kyle did hoon it in the canyons, Angeles Crest, whatever. Yeah. ACH or whatever. So I think it's, yeah, I wanted to like it, but the more I watched Kyle and talked to him about it, the more I was like, oh, this is abysmal. And kind of as we would expect, it does okay handling wise. The suspension, he said, was great. Interior was great. Steering feel was solid. Interior quality, like materials, was great. But what's interesting though is it also is because it was like CX-30 platform, which is front engine. This now just doesn't really have a front engine. The battery's in the back, so it has more of a 911 60% rear weight distribution, which Kyle pointed out. It was like he kind of like went into corners treating it like a 911 and was kind of on par with what he was expecting, with the back end kind of peeling out, and then you want to like pull it forward really fast, and it's just not fast.
I'll say last time I checked too, 911s aren't front wheel drive, but
well, yeah. So
there's another over. Yeah. I think so. Going into the car, right? So I heard a little bit about this car. I remember when they announced it, and then you started seeing fake pictures of it, and it's coming out. And I remember reading about it, and it said 100 miles of range. And I know everybody did a collective sigh, like, oh, great. So we're back like 8 years ago, back to the original Leaf, maybe 100 miles of range. And granted, as Jordan said, in the real world, in everybody's daily life, 90% of people will never need more than that, because you're just going to come home, you're going to plug it in overnight, and every day you're going to wake up with a battery charged with enough range to get to work, do your errands, do whatever you got to do. But with the battery, it seems to be, off the reviews that I've seen and read, and even in Kyle's review, in Southern California, nobody was hitting the EPA range. I think Kyle originally went what was it, 60 miles before he first charged, and he had 37% range left.
Oh, he's
So
like
I think
20,
he was only projecting
20
like,
something.
20. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And he was only projecting like 80 something miles.
Yeah.
And to me, that is the big killer of that car. And then on top of a charging curve where at that battery charge level, that car should be maxed out at 50 kilowatt, as Mazda says it will charge at, and it never got there. It stayed right at 33 kilowatts, which is terrible. Then tapered down to 20.
Yep.
I mean, at 80%, which is even worse.
And
I mean,
he got to the charger with a warm battery at relatively low state of charge, which should theoretically be maximum charging rate, like ready. Like it was ready to accept anything EA could give it, Electrify America, and that was all they could give it. So, and he even tested another charger just to make sure it wasn't that location. So he went to a different charger in a different location, same exact thing. So pretty disappointing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm hating on this car, because in reality, I'm not. I actually kind of like the way it looks. It reminds me of a Mazda RX-8. I mean, it's got kind of a longer hood. It's got that clamshell rear door, except it's just on stilts. I mean, that's basically what it is. And the lighting looks cool on the outside. The interior is probably, I think, Mazda's best interior. Yeah. Just looking at it, because I don't need leather or any of that crazy stuff in my car. Just that interior looks nice, and Mazda knows how to put an interior together.
I think Mazda said they use recycled denim to make the seats.
That's
cool. It's a very sustainably sourced interior, which is really cool. If the rumors are true and they do a range extender using a rotary engine, I can't think of a cooler garage than an RX-8 and an MX-30. You've got two rotary powered,
a quirky garage.
Quirky. Yeah,
I was going to say there's going to be a lot of oil needed in that garage.
A lot of oil on the floor, probably too.
Yeah, Mazda styling, and then the doors, which I think they call coach doors, but we're just going to call
they're RX-8 doors. Yeah, absolutely. RX-8 is hot take. RX-8 is my favorite rotary car that Mazda has made, which is an incredibly hot take. Because a lot of people love the RX-7 and the older. What was it? I'm blanking on the name of it.
You're talking before RX-7?
Yeah, before the RX. I can't remember
the
OG
Cosmo? RX cars.
Is the Cosmo also a rotary? I think it was.
Maybe. Yeah, my knowledge of rotaries doesn't go back
that far. Anyway, I do think that back to the MX-30, it's really interesting because I'm trying to figure out like what you would cross shop it with, and I would think like, okay, probably like the Bolt or the Volt, Nissan Leaf. Like if you're looking at a more economy size around town EV, it's really tough to justify it because of what you guys said, the range and the charging being so abysmal. Like it is going to be enough range for most people, but like we've talked about before on this podcast, a lot of people like the idea of things when they buy cars. They don't buy cars for what they can do. They buy cars for what they are like advertised as, like, okay, it's an outdoor lifestyle vehicle. Oh, I can buy this because I'll do so much kayaking. You probably don't even know how to kayak. So to me, it's interesting because I don't really see this winning out over a lot of EVs, even though I do love the Mazda brand. And like you guys said, it's a stunning interior. It's just tough. I think this seems like Mazda was given a homework assignment they really didn't want to do. And now we're seeing the result.
Well,
yeah, I mean,
you pick
even
your battles.
In this video, he said they're at the press launch, Mazda's own product managers were there, and they were not excited about this car. And I see why they wouldn't be, because they probably knew that the reviews were not going to be great, especially on the range and really even on the price, because it's not that cheap.
Yeah, they were dreading
of an EV.
It's not like it starts at 23,000. Like, wow, that's really that's
I mean, you can get
a
Leaf S is cheaper. Even a Leaf SV is in that same ballpark, and it gets much more range. And then there's the Mini Cooper SE, which is under $30,000 for the entry level model, and then all the incentives you get, plus the $7,500 federal credit. And I know in Colorado there's a $2,500 credit, I believe, and in like New Jersey, there's like a $3,500 $500 or $4,000 credit on top of that. So some of those cars that we just listed are back at $20,000 cars at the end of the day, where this loaded version of the Mazda, I believe, like the one Kyle was in, was probably closer to a $40,000 car. And honestly, you would just get an ID4 at that point in reality. And I don't want to sound like I'm hating on Mazda, because I'm not Mazda fan.
It's hard to make an argument for it. And I think we all like Mazda a lot here. Jordan probably more than us, but I do think it's really hard to make an argument for it. Jordan, you're about to comment?
I want to like it. Actually, the CX-30 was similar thing. Like I got that car. I was like, oh sweet, 2.5 liter turbo, all-wheel drive, like basically lifted Mazda 3 hot hatchback. And it was good, but like I ended up thinking the styling wasn't as good as I thought originally. Like, and I don't know. The interior was great. That's like a big reason to get it. It drove fine. It was decently quick, but under like really intense performance driving, which I guess most people won't do, we had some issues with like shaking in the drive shaft, and like it was like Mazda didn't really design it to be driven like a hot hatch. So yeah, the MX-30 is a very niche car for a niche buyer, which exists. There are people out there who are like, this looks better than a Leaf and a Bolt, and they're right. And their commute is short. I mean, these are the same people that probably bought the Fiat 500e and other
i3 buyers, if you think about it. This
is a successor to the i3 in a weird way.
Way less expensive.
It's got quirky styling, not great numbers, recycled materials on the interior. No, I do agree, Jordan. I think like I don't want to say that maybe we've seen the best Mazda has to offer for like as of late, because they have produced some really great cars, like the latest generation Mazda 3, the latest generation Mazda Miata with the power bump. But like, I wonder if they're gonna produce great performance fun cars, but I don't want to see the rest of their lineup lack because of that. And especially on the EV side of things, because that's kind of where everything is going. I was really hoping to see like a more a stronger first United States candidate for that.
Yeah, you wanted to see a more well-rounded attempt, not something that was just kind of half-assed and thrown out to the public. So there's a reason they're only selling 500 of them this year. Let's see how it does. Yeah, and like Kyle said in his video, if you can lease one for $100 with taxes and everything included, it's probably worth owning for 2 years or something if it works for you. But I would not pay hundreds of dollars a month for that car.
Mazda, it would have to be a great deal, or you just are obsessed with Mazda, like blind fandom. But one last thing about this that's really funny to me is included with your car is, at least for our first couple of years, you get 10 days a year where you can pick a different Mazda with unlimited miles for road trips. You can leave your MX-30 at a Mazda dealer, switch out for one of their other cars, and take it on a road trip.
I hope they charge it.
You get you come back to a completely flat.
Yeah, it's just flat.
So that's funny, because basically Mazda's like, yeah, we know you can't road trip this at all. Like, sorry,
you're stuck in the city. Yeah,
which is interesting because
CX-9
I think
for the week.
Kyle mentioned or someone mentioned that the i3 had this program and it went horribly wrong. Like, basically dealers weren't on the same page. A lot of dealers, like, people showed up with their i3 and the dealers like, oh, those are like cars for service, like loaners, and like it did not work. So we'll see if it works with Mazda. It takes dealer participation and teamwork, which doesn't always happen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a good idea on paper. Let's put it that way. But I think you're right. I think there's going to be, it honestly will depend on how many of these cars sell. I mean, if there's only 1,000 of these things out there in 2 years, then I don't think a dealer will really care. But most dealers only stock a certain number of loaners. And Audi did something similar. I think when I bought my e-tron, I got a certain number of free rental days at Silver Car, which is owned by Audi. And so you rent silver Audis. And I got I think it was like a week free rental included. So I never actually used it. I probably still could. I probably have that code still and get a free rental in a Q5. Why not?
And if you think about it, that is really smart because realistically, you're not going to road trip for more than 10 days a year, or at least most people. But yeah, it's really smart. Yeah, it's really smart if the dealers play a part, which, that could be really challenging, especially if they sell a super small number of cars.
Yeah. Well, what I think will be a successful car or truck is the Ford Maverick. I don't know if we've spent much time on this in the podcast before, but now is a good time to talk about it because we're coming up this week are a lot of journalist events. There's a very few reviews officially out yet. There's probably some sort of embargo, but a lot of people, including one of our own, are going to this event. So we'll have more news on the actual, driving dynamics and everything next week. Theoretically, depending on the embargo, but we can at least talk about it.
It should be later this week. I can tell you that. I know when the embargo is, so it should be later this week that we can hear about it.
We should, but we should be able to talk about what we do know, and there's somewhat of a vested interest here because Austin is giving it serious thought. Which Austin, you should explain your thoughts because you, until recently, were pretty set on like a Bronco Sport. So why have you kind of shifted towards the Maverick?
Well, the Bronco Sport was more so for my wife, and I'm still considering that. But after taking some serious looking into the Bronco Sport and then seeing the Maverick in the lineup and all the buzz that it's kind of generated in the car media, I just think it's a really interesting vehicle. Really, the only things that are out right now that compete with it are the Ridgeline and the Santa Cruz. And I think they all bring very different things to the table. The Ridgeline, I'd say, competes most closely with the Maverick as far as the type of vehicle they're trying to portray it as, more of a lifestyle adventure vehicle, but on a budget and not quite as capable as I don't know, like a Bronco. But it's extremely cheap. The big thing is it's $20,000 or under $20,000 for the XL for the base model. But after building one out, I think Jordan may have my build up on the screen here. I chose the XLT. So the videos actually shed some light on some things that I didn't realize. I didn't realize that even the base model get the 8-inch touchscreen with CarPlay.
Yes, so very good of Ford to include that.
Yeah, that was very impressive to me. I was like, wow, because a lot of times Ford prior, if you didn't upgrade it, you got a chintzy little screen that was basically useless, that your radio came up on and your Bluetooth or your phone connectivity came up on. But the XL model does not include cruise control, which I found out too, which was extremely interesting. I cannot live without cruise control, especially for how many road trips I want to take this vehicle on. Another thing that I thought was really cool was hearing some people drive it and hearing some of the startup and how it actually sounds, because the 2-liter EcoBoost is a motor that I enjoy. I don't have that exact motor in my car, but I have one similar. And I don't know, an all-wheel drive little mini truck with a turbo.
I was going to say, so it sounds like you're going to go 2-liter EcoBoost, which means you can tow the most.
Yes, you can tow I think it's only 5,000 pounds still with the tow package, so nothing crazy. However, it would be enough for something light, but I would probably go the route of doing the rack system on the rear and putting a rooftop tent up there. And it's not a big enough bed to fit a whole rooftop tent, so I'd probably have to line up the roof rack with the bed rack and then put a tent on top of that. But I don't know, I just think it looks great. The fuel economy is actually surprisingly really good. I think on the EcoBoost it's 28 highway, 23 city, something like that. I think it was close to 25 combined, which for an all-wheel drive SUV or all-wheel drive truck is pretty good. Not super far off from what I get in my little economy hatchback right now. So I don't know. Yeah, I think it's a very interesting segment, and I like it a lot. And I think it's really cool that Ford is capitalizing on it because of the buyers it will attract. And I'm betting that their hope is to capture people that wouldn't typically buy a truck, especially because they're offering it with a hybrid drivetrain where it can get up to 40 miles per gallon in the city. And they're probably going to sell people on the utility of having a truck, and then their next thing will be to sell them the F-150 is my guess. But I'd be interested to hear y'all's take on it and what your thoughts are on it.
Yeah,
It's amazing. I was just going to say, it's amazing how much cheaper this is than F-150.
Oh, yeah. I mean, for this
And
price point to get the features you get, I mean, it's pretty incredible. And I think Ford is actually going to sell quite a few of these because they got rid of the EcoSport, which is probably their worst product they've made in a long time.
Agreed.
I know it was like the worst.
It's hideous.
It's the worst Ford product I've driven in a long time.
It's the worst one I've looked at maybe ever.
And I think a lot of people who don't want an Escape are going to buy this truck. I mean, there's really nothing else you can buy unless you want to go all the way up to the full-blown F-150. But I just think having the truck offers you a lot more utility than a standard SUV.
It undercuts the Santa Cruz by a decent amount. And I think the styling of it is a lot less polarizing than the Santa Cruz. I think it's, you could say, less offensive. I think the Santa Cruz does look really cool, but it definitely has a more, of a presence. And I think the styling very much just fits the ethos of a Ford truck, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. Yeah, and I do think it's interesting because it does have a lot more use. And I built a Ford Bronco Sport, it shares the same platform with basically the same upgrades. And it actually came out to pretty much the exact same price. It was the Big Bend with a bunch of the like interior upgrades that you could get. And that's the same build that this one is. It's the XLT with all-wheel drive. And yeah, they both came out to like $32,000. Pretty much fully loaded for that mid trim, and it's pretty impressive what you get for the money.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it will sell well because everyone seems to be obsessed with trucks and SUVs right now, and a lot of people who buy SUVs, a lot of people who buy SUVs don't need all the third row or anything, and some of them buy them because they can sometimes be found cheaper than a great truck. Like a well-spec'd, like premium feeling SUV is cheaper than a premium feeling F-150. The Ranger does undercut that a bit. It is an interesting middle child with the advent of the Maverick. But it is amazing how much more expensive the Ranger is than the Maverick, kind of spec for spec. Because Austin, you built this out to be roughly $30,000, which has, I would say, what most people would need. I did see a write-up that did compare the Santa Cruz and the Ridgeline and the Maverick. Santa Cruz Turbo has a bit more power, but otherwise, it's also, I mean, it's really comparable, but more expensive and maybe a little less usable and worse gas mileage. So it kind of depends what you're looking for. I think the Santa Cruz looks really awesome, but some people hate how it looks. Like you said, it's polarizing. Mm-hmm. This looks like Ford truck.
Yeah, it's a shrunken F-150.
Yeah, which is awesome. Because I like the F-150. I like the Ranger. They're just a bit big. The Ranger used to be a small, compact truck, and then it got big just like everything else in the world. And now Ford has brought a new thing in using a previous name that was not on a truck. And they're putting it as a small, compact truck, which is awesome. And it's unibody. And I think it's brilliant. And having that hybrid option, like you said, it is, hybrid front wheel drive with not much towing. That's disappointing unless you don't tow. And like how
I think that'll be more than enough for a lot of people.
Yeah, and how a lot of people use their trucks are like getting to work in a city. Like
I also think about businesses.
Maverick is perfect.
I think it's going to be a very commonly chosen business vehicle because of how great fuel economy it gets, and you still get that utility of having a bed in the back. Where I could see a lot of companies choosing this as a company vehicle because you see so many like Nissan Frontiers and Toyota Tacomas used, and they're not necessarily used for like heavy hauling, but I don't know. I think there's a lot of avenues for Ford to open this up. But Jordan, I think that's a really interesting point, because I did have somebody ask me here recently, like, why would I get a Ranger if the Maverick is so cheap? And I think the Ranger is probably going to be honestly the same crowd as a Tacoma, where you want something that actually has a little bit more off-road capability and can tow a little bit more. I think the Ranger maxes out about 7,800 pounds for tow capacity. But you do get the option for a true four-wheel drive system with locking rear differential, which is not something that you get in the Maverick. So for serious off-roading and for a little bit heavier hauling, if you don't want something the size of an F-150, which you said is like a boat, those things are massive now. I think it's a good option for that, and it does undercut the Tacoma by a little bit. So.
Yeah, it does only have 4,000 pounds towing, and what is it, a 4-foot bed, 4.5-foot bed?
4.5.
Yeah, a smaller bed, but you can make like these little like barriers that you can put in there to kind of like Volkswagen's cargo system for the bed, which is really interesting. I think the utility of the bed is pretty awesome.
Yeah, they have slots to build like little storage cubbies where you can slot in like 2x4s and 4x6s, and then they also have a QR code you can scan in the rear, which will give you ideas on how to build your own like bed
which is cool.
Yeah, and they also have like built-in tie downs. They have power in the rear. They have outlet in the rear. They have connections specifically for accessories like light bars or what have you. So I don't know. It's very interesting to me, because they're definitely, this to me falls in the same boat as the Bronco Sport, to where they're trying to sell a outdoorsy vehicle and a lifestyle vehicle without being at the premium of a Bronco or like a 4Runner, which I just think is really interesting. They're almost like trying to undercut that market for the 4Runner and the Tacoma, because so many people buy those vehicles for those purposes.
Well, I think a great garage for you would be the Maverick, the Bronco Sport, and your Fiesta ST. Ford family, 3 different EcoBoosts. Yep. I think it's perfect.
That's a lot of EcoBoost.
Yeah, it's a lot of boost in the garage.
Let's look at something truly off-road capable. The Hummer EV first drives are coming out, and our friend over at Inside EVs, Tom Malogny, has been able to drive it and be driven. It was interesting to see which things they would let you drive versus what they drove you in. This is kind of ridiculous. I mean, this is
tank. That is,
yeah. Talk about one of the biggest EVs of the year. I thought it was the biggest EV of the year, but technically the E-Transit's still supposed to come out. So we'll see if that does come out by the end of 2021. Because I can't wait to see Kyle driving the E-Transit. But the Hummer EV, I mean, it's basically hailed as like a super truck. GM is super excited about it. And there's a lot riding on it, because this whole Bolt, like battery recall and everything, like GM is not in a good light as far as the EV realm. So hopefully this turns it around for them. Hopefully this has a successful launch. It won't be as popular as the Bolt, because the Bolt is like a fraction of the cost. These are easily 6 figures.
Literally a third of the price.
So it's cool. I think it's awesome. It's unique. This is the like pickup truck variant. There's also a SUV variant. It is a huge vehicle though, 216 inches long, 86 inches wide, 81 inches high.
Gosh.
That is, and it weighs over 9,000 pounds.
You could definitely get weighted plates for that.
Yeah,
exempt.
that is more than 3.5 times the weight of my car.
That's probably double the length and almost double the width.
Yeah, it's so wild. It would not fit in my garage, so I did measure. But yeah, it's supposed to. So the, I guess, EV3X will be coming in fall of 2022. So that'll be their $100,000 option, and the EV2X will be their $90,000 option, and then EV2 will be $80,000, which is still like 2.5 years away before they're like a lot of manufacturers. They're starting with the premium models and working their way down the totem pole, eventually getting to us plebs.
At
I,
79 grand starting.
yeah, because I can
super
afford
affordable.
to do that. They're giving me time to save up. It's great. But 1,000 horsepower, 1,200 pound-feet of torque, that is 0 to 60 in 3 seconds for a 9,000 pound vehicle. It's insane.
I was
3
about to say those
permanent.
power numbers aren't impressive with how much it weighs, but then when you talk about the performance numbers, it actually is really impressive.
Yeah. So it says 350 miles range, not EPA tested yet, and it's over 200 kilowatt hours. So if you actually break it down, it's not that efficient, which is expected.
Not
For a
surprising.
9,000 pound brick.
And
That rides super high.
yeah. And so the one Tom was riding was the Edition 1, which is 113 grand more or less. And he got to do some off-roading stuff. Now this is interesting because Tom just went on the Rivian expedition out here in Colorado. So did some off-roading in the Rivian back to back with the Hummer. He was shocked at how capable the Hummer was. Maybe not too shocked. Like the standard wheels are 35s. Like that's insane. And they don't even look that big. You can fit 37s on the factory Hummer EV. But it's got rock crawling capabilities, lots of like off-road terrain, tow haul, comparable driving modes to all the other trucks out nowadays. 18 camera ultra vision system. I love their naming scheme for all their stuff, which is cool. Tom noted the Rivian has really useful cameras looking at all four wheels for off-roading, but the Hummer goes a step further and has cameras on the underside, like inner wheel, so you could like see both the outside and the inside of the wheels, what your approach and departure and breakover looks like in real time using cameras. And each camera has a little washer, which he said was actually very convenient. So I love it.
I can imagine.
That is great.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, it does things like crab walk, which was their big. Rivian had the tank turn, that was their big stunt they pulled to get a lot of attention. Hummers was the crab walk. Neither of those are probably super useful, hardly ever, but it is another tool in your Batman belt of things you can use outdoors, or if you just want to show someone the coolest way to
that'll
like
be
the
used
next lane over.
So I guarantee that'll be used in driveways and city streets more than off-road.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Same with extract mode. So this Hummer actually didn't have extract mode enabled, so they couldn't test it. But it'll raise it to almost 16 inches of ground clearance, which is more than the already really impressive Rivian. And what's funny is I think more people are going to use extract mode to show their neighbors how easily they can get in and out of their crazy driveways than they will off-road. But it's really cool that it can do that. Probably temporarily, probably to a really limited speed. I'm sure we'll test that once we do get a spec with extract mode. But similar to the Taycan where it has lift mode, which will give you temporarily, I don't remember how many inches of ground clearance, but it's up to like under 20 miles an hour, and then it lowers it back down.
That's insane.
So
that is extract mode makes me think of like a helicopter that will just come pick it up when it's stuck. That doesn't make me think of like a suspension raising feature.
Yeah. Total tangent, but looking at the Audi Q4 e-tron, which we talked about before, with the Audi, what do you call it, Mike? The service plan you can buy, it's like $1,000 for 3 years. It includes a certain number of
prepaid
tows.
maintenance. Oh yeah.
It includes
if
a
your
certain
battery
number
runs dry.
Towing, like tows per year for when you run your battery flat. Thought that was funny. But
without penalty.
Independent front and rear suspension, front e-locker, rear virtual locker. Yeah, interesting.
What? You can virtually lock a diff?
Well, I think it's called that because the rear, there's two motors, one for each rear wheel.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So this is a 3-motor system. Pretty
that's
wild.
Cool, actually. I really dig that. A virtual locker. That's interesting.
I will say. Oh, go ahead. I was going to say, I will say, it seems very impressive. I won't lie. I was not really interested in this truck. I still kind of not. I just think it's like an excessive amount of everything. You just don't need something like this to drive around and go to the mall, which is what 80% of these things are going to do. Now, you're going to see plenty of videos of them, off-roading. I doubt you'll see them crabbing like that photo there on the beach, maybe out in the Outer Banks. You never know. Yeah. But I think truck's a little excessive. I don't know why you couldn't just spend your time making like a proper EV that more people can afford, even if it was a $50,000 or $60,000 truck to compete maybe more directly with your rival at Ford. And I know that truck is coming, but I just don't understand the need to buy EV this big. I guess Hummer, the way it's always been about excess and showing off a little bit.
I think, Jordan, like you said, this is really interesting because, Mike, I definitely have asked myself the same question of this had to take a lot of money and resources to put into production, and could they not have used that elsewhere? But they also already have a few solid EVs in the market that, granted, are being affected by a recall right now. But I do think it's a very interesting...
I didn't mention the Bolt.
Yeah, so I think it is very interesting at the time that this is coming out, because it's, in a way, GM is choosing a all-electric super truck as their halo car right now, outside of the C8 Corvette. This really is a halo car for the brand. They're reviving this legendary name, and they're making it with incredible specs. And a lot of people may go to the dealer to see one and then walk out with a Bolt. I don't really see that happening too much, but like, I don't know. I just think it's
a good point.
It gets people talking about an EV.
They compare prices and they're like, "Oh, the Bolt is the one in my budget. I'll buy that."
Oh, I could buy 3 Bolts for one of these.
I mean, my hope is that some of that cool technology that they're implementing in the Hummer trickles down. Yeah. It has to have cost hundreds of millions of dollars, if not $1 billion worth of development for this thing.
In a way, though, it could.
Give me a Bolt with watts. Give me a Bolt with watts to freedom mode. WTF mode.
Yeah. Give me a Bolt with extraction mode. No, I do. Maybe in a way, this has been a guinea pig for them to really work out the kinks in a EV truck platform, though, because this has been in development for a while. Maybe they'll take this directly and throw it on the Chevy or the GMC electric, whenever that does come out. Maybe this has been a way for them to trial some of that, because I do think that Ford having stock in Rivian probably gave them some advantages when it came to developing the F-150. So maybe this has kind of been that for GM. I don't know. It's just a lot of really interesting things around like why they chose to make such an expensive, such an obscure car that really won't put out the same sales numbers as like the F-150 Lightning will.
It's just funny because, like, Mike not being super excited about it, I was the same boat, because I just had the stigma around Hummer H2 and H3 owners. Like, but what's funny is they like literally built this for them. They're like, "Oh, I see you love spending buku bucks on your Hummer and you never actually take it anywhere or like put it through its paces. Like, here's another Hummer for you." Like they like making them cool and gaudy and interesting, and like it kind of works. But it's funny because this is actually theoretically really capable, probably more than most of the Hummers you see on the road. But I guess it kind of makes sense, but it's just really like it's extra in so many ways. I mean, even the music they played during the launch, the whole WTF mode, watts to freedom, which, you know, everyone's doing, they're having fun with it, which I admire. Like the Bronco for Ford has the GOAT modes, which is like, I love it. But it's excessive, which is fun. And this actually is a good way for them to, like you said, develop a lot of things that they know may not be extremely popular, that like people aren't going to buy these and put them through their paces 100% of the time. In some ways, Ford is taking a bit of a risk electrifying the F-150, because there's probably going to be things they may have to work out kinks wise. And it's like, they're going to have so many orders and so many in customers' hands. So maybe GM kind of learned through the Bolt of like, well, we had a lot of issues, but I think they've learned a lot from that. So it'll be interesting to see these on the road. They will have a heck of a presence. maybe I'd love to see one next to a Cybertruck, because like that would just be two giant vehicles that I don't know how much the Cybertruck will weigh, but probably not too much less than this if it's all
Or
like
like 7,000
thick
pounds at
thick
least.
stainless steel. Like yeah. So I don't know. It'll be interesting. I love the idea of seeing a lot of these vehicles on the road, because they're so ridiculous, but you know they're going to be on the road sooner than later. So we'll see. I do want to, speaking of Ford and GM, we have a quick follow up to something we talked about in a previous podcast. That stupid lawsuit over Blue Cruise. They're finally coming towards. They're cruising towards a solution, and I think they're just basically like settling. It was literally like two kids fighting over fruit snacks on the playground, and the teachers like sorted out, and then finally both kids were like, "Fine, we'll just both enjoy our fruit snacks," because the lawsuit was Blue Cruise being too similar to the word Super Cruise, and the only thing in common was cruise, which literally every other car on the road except for the base model Maverick has cruise control. So it's like, what is this? Like, I literally didn't think it was real, and I don't know. Maybe both companies had it in mind to do a lawsuit just for the publicity, and then they settled because they're like, hey, we got publicity, yay.
I don't know. GM's gotten enough publicity with what's been going on lately. Probably could have used that money they used in court on those battery recalls.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because this is coming out now after the recall thing, where the original news broke way before the recall. So.
That's true. That's true. Maybe that's why they aren't going harder after Ford on it.
They're like, oh, never mind. We have our own problems.
Never mind. You can use the word cruise, I guess.
Mike, have you used Super Cruise or Blue Cruise at all?
I've unfortunately never had the opportunity. At work, I've searched for Cadillacs that have had Super Cruise. I've never been able to find one, at least that I could try and get access to drive. Really want to experience it, and I really want to experience Ford's Copilot 360 as well.
Yeah. I've done some of the Copilot 360 stuff because there's different levels of it, I guess. And I've done the second highest level in both the full-sized four-door F-150 as well as the Mustang Mach-E, and I was really impressed with it. The one annoying thing with Ford, I'd love to see how each vehicle does its own like emergency warning system, because the Ford, if it thinks you might hit a car in front of you, I mean, it's like tornado sirens in your car. It's insane, and it's sometimes too finicky. Like I was in the Mustang Mach-E, and someone had, basically gotten over to the turn lane to turn right, slowed way down. They weren't even in my lane, maybe ever so slightly, and I was on the far side of the other lane, and the Mustang was like, "Oh my gosh, we're gonna hit him," and threw up the big like red flashing warning symbol. And like the sound scared, like the sound was more threatening in my life than the actual potential of a crash. It was
that sounds
horrifying.
Like early autopilot days.
A lot of warnings.
Autopilot 2017.
Well, me and Kyle took the Model 3 to pick up his van, which has been in a shop for over a month, and they didn't do anything to it. That's a whole thing. But I was commenting on because Kyle has autopilot in his Model 3, not full self-driving, just autopilot, but it has the full self-driving preview, the thing on the screen that shows other cars and cones and people around you. And I was commenting on how funny that thing is, because like in my garage, when I had his Model 3 in my garage, I have my winter wheels on the side wall for my Miata, and the Model 3 saw those wheels and thought a semi-truck was parked in the garage next to me. It just showed it on the screen. It was hilarious. And he's like, yeah, you should have seen the early days of the self-driving preview, because it was
hilarious.
Wild.
Everything was glitchy. Yeah.
It was.
He said
so
there's like cars
funny.
spinning around.
Yeah, they'd spin around, they'd like hit you. It looked like they were like hitting you. It was just the funniest thing.
We've come a long ways. And I have one more story I want to throw in here. Also because it was a previous podcast topic / obsession, the Lotus Emira. The V6 first edition has been announced for under 100 grand, which makes me excited.
And
I don't
news
have
just
100
in:
grand.
Jordan just ordered one.
If
Put his
anyone wants
name
to
on the list.
if anyone wants to donate towards my
Start a
Emira
GoFundMe.
fund,
Yeah.
yeah.
Jordan's
Um,
house has hit the market. Everybody,
Who needs a house when you
Who
can
needs,
have an
all the
Emira?
equity in your house just goes right
no,
towards
yeah,
this car.
depreciating
So
assets are the way to go.
yeah, I'm
Always.
beyond excited. So it has, as we know, the V6 sourced from Toyota, which actually is the 2GR FE. So it's 3.5 liter V6 with an Edelbrock, is that how you say it? Supercharger.
Edelbrock.
Yeah.
Edelbrock, 400 horsepower, and yeah,
That's
310
really close
pound-feet
to
of torque.
2JZ sounding. It's not, but it's really close to it.
Well, wasn't the let's see, the Exige I cruised with has the 2ZZ from your
It
Celica
sure
GTS that you
does.
had. Yep. If you had supercharged your Celica, you would have basically had a front
I
engine
considered it. I was
Exige.
broke high schooler when I had it, but I thought that would have been the coolest thing. I would have been little Lotus powered Toyota.
It's funny how the 6-speed manual gets 310 pound-feet of torque, and the 6-speed auto gives you 317 pound-feet of torque. Uh, and the auto is quicker to 60 by a tenth of a
Yeah, of
second.
course.
That's expected, but the difference in torque is really funny unless they just have the red lines set
Or if it's a
different.
gearing thing, maybe.
Yeah, like it's peak gearing, but they don't say there's any difference in the horsepower. So that's kind of funny.
That's super strange.
And then 6 exterior colors, which I've already determined the dark Verdant green is the most stunning
So
thing
where does
I've
the
ever
first
seen.
edition fall in the, like, I guess, levels of the Lotus, if there even are different trim levels? Because I'm sure we've looked at this, but I've looked at so many other car configurators since then, I cannot remember.
Let's see. So I'm guessing this is just like the first edition of the V6, and I think they'll just continue the V6 after first edition, maybe minus a feature or two, minus a color. I don't know. Probably comparable pricing. And then the 4-cylinder, it says, will start in 2023 at 73.9.
Oh, that's right. Okay, so they did have is it a turbo 4-cylinder?
Turbo, yeah. So you supercharged V6 or turbo 4. The 4-cylinder is sourced from AMG, which could be. I'm really intrigued by that one. I know I'll want the 6-cylinder, but like the Supra, I'm intrigued by the smaller, unsung hero.
I mean, AMG 4-cylinders are pretty high strung.
Quite.
I mean, they're
Yeah.
quite rowdy.
Yeah, they have a lot of character to them.
What my
yeah,
hope
that's
is,
a good point, Jordan. Could be more balanced with the smaller motor, because I think that supercharged V6 would be a lot of power for a car that small and light.
so additional colors will arrive next year. And there are many interior color choices. You can actually get anything from like saddle brown to black Alcantara. And what I'm curious about is the engine aside, like will each engine have different features? Because the issue with the 4-cylinder Supra, that was my favorite Supra because it felt like I was using more of it on a day-to-day basis. But when me and Kyle drove the Supras on track together, it was amazing how quickly the 4-cylinder one had brake fade. It just couldn't do that for long periods of time. And it wasn't even because of the engine. It was just the brakes were not upgraded.
The rest of the car was not equipped to handle that type of driving. That's
like
interesting.
I would love the like 6-cylinder Supra with the 4-cylinder engine, if that
So
makes
just
sense.
get a
Like
4-cylinder Supra and then swap GR parts on it. Then you're good.
yeah. So this will be really interesting. I can't wait to see these on the road. And one of the things that pulls me towards Lotus so much is how little you see them. Like I am so bored of seeing Lamborghinis. Like it's just like, oh, another Aventador. But I see a Lotus Evora from like 10 years ago, and I get so excited because they're so much more rare. So I can't wait to see these things like actually in person, because just like the Supra, when I saw the renderings online, I was kind of disappointed actually. Like I love the FT1 concept the Supra was based on. And then I saw the Supra photos and I was like, oh, this is ugly.
Well,
And then seeing it in person changed my mind. I was like, oh, this is actually pretty cool. The Emira, I've never been this obsessed with a rendering. And so I can't even imagine seeing it in person.
Well, just wait till I would give it as soon as they're announced and come out, and I bet you'll see one at your nearest Cars and Coffee that next week.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. But yeah, that's pretty much it. We just hit an hour. That was a great show.
Oh wow!
So thanks for hanging with us and talking cars, hearing about Kyle's various experiences. We'll have him on the show soon. I promise. He's busy driving the Mercedes EQS right now, which we're super excited and intrigued about.
Yes.
And then he's going to Belgium to drive the Volvo C40. So that'll also be really interesting.
Oh, they're bringing him all the way to Belgium. They're not doing it here. That's
apparently
interesting.
Yeah.
That car, I'm very excited for that car. I actually had one on pre-order once. And then I canceled my order, but I did have one on pre-order.
We'll talk about Volvo and Polestar soon because that's a whole other interesting debacle. Not really debacle. It's just an interesting dichotomy of brand, sub-brand sort of thing. The Polestar 2 versus the C40. It's fascinating. But check out our stuff at Out of Spec. That is our main Twitter. You should also check out It's Kyle Connor because he's posting a lot of wild stuff that he's up to, and we'll get him on the show soon to talk about a lot of it. We have myself, Jordan _Schiefer. Mike is M_Breeling. And Austin is at Flywheel Films on Instagram. Hopefully Instagram's not down like it was earlier this week for a massive outage. Like Twitter got bombarded with people coming from everywhere.
Yeah. Facebook and Instagram have been down, I think, all day. So
they just went live, I think, recently.
Bad day to be influencer, I guess.
Yeah. Fun times. We'll see you guys very soon in another show. Peace.